This isn't about becoming someone new. It's just about returning to yourself at a deeper level than before. Welcome to Life and Love by Design. I'm life and relationship coach Odette Coronel. This podcast is for individuals and couples who are done living on autopilot, who are ready to understand the patterns shaping their relationships, their choices, and their sense of self, and redesign them with purpose and intention. Here, we don't just talk about what's hard. We name what's actually happening beneath it and what to do about it. And if you start recognizing yourself or your relationship in these conversations, know that this is the exact work that I do with my private coaching clients, individuals and couples who are ready for real change. Because a meaningful life and connected relationships don't happen by default. They're designed. So let's begin. Welcome back to Life and Love by Design. This is the podcast where we talk about how to live and love with purpose and intention and not by default. I'm your host, Odette Coronel, and today we're talking about how to reclaim your power and reignite love after 40. And this is really meaningful for me, this topic, because I really believe that something really powerful happens after 40, and it really has the potential to really transform your life and your relationships. And I want to briefly, for those of you that don't know me, I want to kind of reintroduce myself. So, as you know, I'm a life and relationship coach, and I work with smart, hardworking individuals and couples that are feeling disconnected or that they've lost a sense of meaning and purpose in their lives. And I help them to reconnect with themselves and with each other and to start living with more purpose and intention and not by default. And I'm also a coach supervisor. So I help other relationship coaches in their work with their clients. And I'm an NLP practitioner, which NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. So I bring that training to my coaching. And I've also have some training with the Gottman Institute, and I'm a Gottman leader for Principles for Making Marriage Work Couples program. And of course, I'm the host of this wonderful podcast, Life and Love by Design. But, essentially my clients learn how to identify their vision in life, their goals, how to clarify what really matters to them, and how to deepen connection, how to improve communication, how to deal with conflict. And I help my clients cultivate self-awareness and self-confidence and really set goals that are in alignment with their values in order for them to be able to take the steps that truly lead to a life that's more fulfilling. And of course, this is going to automatically lead to more satisfying relationships as well. And just so you know, a little bit of a personal note for me, I've also been happily married to my husband for over 27 years, and we've been together for over 30 years. And together, we've also started and grown and operated a business for over 25 years. At the same time, we've also started, grown, and raised our family of 5. And I share that with you because I want you to understand that I don't just have the training in relationships and in coaching and human behavior and dynamics, but I also have a lot of lived experience. I've experienced every stage of a relationship, including dating and parenting, all the different stages of parenting. Now I'm in the empty nester stage. And I've also know what it's like to actually, build a business with your partner and work together, which has its own set of challenges. So that's why I kind of wanted to share that with you. I wanted you to know like my personal life experience as well. And on the surface, all of that is and sounds like an amazing life, an amazing relationship filled with success and joy and happiness. And it really, truly is. But there are also been tons of challenges along the way, as is true with any life or any relationship. And there was even a time when I really neglected the most important person in my life, which I've come to understand, took me a while, but finally got it, is myself. So I understand the challenges and the demands of really juggling a growing family, a thriving business, and I understand the never ending list of things to do and all of the responsibilities that come with it, and then putting yourself on the bottom of that list of responsibilities and priorities. So now I want you to think about your own life. I bet you've built a life that you're proud of. You've worked really hard. You've achieved things that most people only dream of. And you've probably either built a career or you've raised a family. Maybe you've supported others. You've overcome tons of challenges, and yet you keep showing up, even when it isn't easy. And from the outside and on paper, your life seems very successful, and it is very successful. Most people probably admire everything that you accomplish, and they see someone who's capable, who's strong, and has it all together. And yet, chances are, if you're being honest and you really take a good look, there's a chance that there's a part of you that feels like something's missing. And it's not because you failed and it's not because you're ungrateful, but just because, success and fulfillment are not the same things. And many women reach a point where they realize that they've spent years building a life that maybe it works for everyone else, and maybe it even worked for yourself at one point. But slowly, you might have been losing touch with yourself along the process. And sometimes these women have become so focused on being productive, being responsible, and available that they haven't really stopped to ask, what do I need? What do I want? What would truly make me feel alive again? So, if any of that resonates with you, I want you to know that you're not alone. And, the women that I do work with, they are often accomplished, they're intelligent, they're caring, they're incredibly capable. And the issue isn't that they're doing anything wrong in their life, it's just that somewhere along the line, they've stopped making themselves a priority. So, that's exactly the kind of stuff that we're talking about here today. And this is something that it usually doesn't necessarily come up in a crisis because there's some kind of crisis or something has catastrophic has happened. It doesn't happen because one person wakes up one day and decides that, they don't care anymore. Most of the time it just happens very slowly. Life gets busy. Careers are demanding, kids need attention, maybe aging parents, need support. There are bills to pay, schedules to coordinate, and a never-ending list of responsibilities. And before you know it, your conversations with your partner just start revolving around logistics, like, who's picking up the kids? What time is your meeting? What time are you going to be home? Did you pay that bill? What's the plan for the weekend? You become really excellent business partners in the management of life, but maybe somewhere along the way, that connection starts to fade. And conversations that used to make you feel seen become less frequent. Laughter isn't quite as easy. Maybe the affection is less intentional. And intimacy doesn't necessarily disappear overnight, but it does fade gradually without even noticing. And then one day you find yourself sitting next to someone that you've built an entire life with and yet feel strangely alone. And that's the hardest part because loneliness isn't just about being by yourself. Loneliness is feeling unseen. Loneliness is carrying your worries and your dreams and your frustrations and your needs without feeling truly known by the person next to you or maybe the people next to you. You can be in a marriage or a relationship surrounded by people who love you and still feel really disconnected. So, if you've ever felt that way, I want you to know that you are not the only one. In fact, it's one of the most common experiences I hear from high achieving women. Not because they're broken, not because their relationship is doomed, but because just connection doesn't sustain itself. It really requires intention and attention. So take a moment and ask yourself, when did I stop prioritizing myself? And I don't mean prioritizing myself in a selfish way. I don't mean, forget about everyone else, but in a very human way. When did I stop checking in with myself? When did I stop paying attention to what I need? When did I stop making time for all those things that bring me joy, that bring me energy, that bring me fulfillment? Because if we're being honest, for many women, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a real gradual process. You put your career first because there are goals that you want to achieve, which is perfectly fine. It's perfectly normal. Maybe you put your family first because the people that you love matter to you deeply. But one by one, you make small sacrifices. And maybe you postpone that workout or you cancel that lunch date with a friend. Maybe you stop pursuing that hobby that you once loved. Or you tell yourself, I'll rest later. I'll focus on myself later. I'll figure it out later. But then later becomes months, and months become years. And eventually you're going to wake up and realize that you've become incredibly skilled at taking care of everyone else's needs while losing touch with your own. But the irony is that the very qualities that make you successful, like your drive, your commitment, your willingness to show up for others, those same qualities can make you neglect yourself. But I want you to hear this, and I've said it a million times. Prioritizing yourself is not selfish. It's actually foundational. Because when you're disconnected from yourself, it's really difficult to feel connected to anyone else. The relationship that you have with yourself actually sets the tone for every single relationship that you have in your life. And that's why reclaiming yourself isn't a luxury. It's actually really a starting point to having healthy relationships and healthy dynamics with the people that you care about in your life. And this isn't because you've failed or done anything wrong. In fact, it's actually quite the opposite. You've spent years building and achieving and caring and giving and creating and accomplishing. And you have become the woman that gets things done, the woman that people depend on, the woman that knows how to push through challenges and make things happen. But eventually, many successful women arrive at that point where they realize that what got them here won't necessarily get them where they want to go next. So maybe what worked for you 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or 5 years ago even, may not work for you anymore. And again, it's not a failure, it's a transition. It's a transition from proving yourself to really knowing yourself, from living according to maybe your expectations or other people's expectations or a certain checklist that you had in your mind, to now living according to your intention. And it's the moment where the question shifts from, what do I need to accomplish next to how do I want to experience my life? Think of it almost like an upgrade. So we have our phones, like I have the iPhone, and for a while I had an older phone. I don't know what it was, an iPhone 8, or I don't even know what number it was, but there was nothing wrong with it. It worked perfectly fine. It took photos and videos and all of that. But eventually I did upgrade to the newer iPhone, and I realized, why not? This is more aligned with my needs today. And there was nothing wrong with my old iPhone, but I just needed an upgrade. It matched and was more aligned with the kind of videos that I want to take. And now I can use my phone as my video camera, and it takes better pictures, and I'm more comfortable. It's a little bigger, so I'm more comfortable even using it to send text messages or write emails. So it's just an upgraded version of what I already had. So this is the moment where you realize that there is another level available to you. Not necessarily more success, but more fulfillment, more connection, more joy, and more authenticity, or just more of you. And while transitions can be a little bit uncomfortable, just like when I got the new iPhone, it was a little bit uncomfortable and took some getting used to. Actually, every single time that I have a software upgrade, I kind of feel the same way. I have to get used to it. But it's uncomfortable, but it's also really powerful. And the reason they're so powerful is because they create the opportunity to stop living on autopilot and start designing your life consciously. And that's what I call the next level woman. So this next level isn't about becoming someone different. It's just about reconnecting with who you already are and creating a life and a relationship that reflect that woman. And that starts with a decision to stop settling for a life that maybe looks good on paper and start really creating a life that feels good to actually live. And what most women don't realize is that this moment is actually an invitation. It may not feel like one at first. It may actually feel like frustration or disappointment or restlessness or loneliness or that nagging feeling that something is missing, even though you can't quite put your finger on what it is. But beneath all of that is an invitation. It's an invitation to evolve, because the version of you that got here is not necessarily the version of you that's meant to carry you forward. I mean, think about it. You've grown. Your priorities have changed. Your needs have changed. The things that mattered to you before may not be the most important thing to you anymore. And that is not a problem to solve. It's just a sign that you're growing. And this moment is also an invitation to reconnect. It's to reconnect with yourself, with your desires, your values, your voice. or maybe with those dreams that you've put on hold. It's to help you reconnect with the parts of yourself that maybe have gotten buried underneath years of responsibility and expectations. And perhaps most importantly, it's an invitation to create something new, not because your life is broken or because your relationship is failing, but because every meaningful chapter of life requires us to become intentional again, to stop living by default and start living by design, to ask ourselves, what is it that I want in this next chapter? How do I want to feel? What kind of relationship do I want to have with myself, with my partner, with my life? Because the women that create extraordinary lives aren't the women who never experience discontent. They're actually the women who recognize when they're feeling discontent. They recognize it as a signal that they're ready for the next level. And the quality of your relationships will never exceed the quality of your relationship with yourself. I want you to really let that land for a moment. And if you're feeling unhappy or disconnected or unfulfilled in your relationship, this is not about blaming your partner or pointing your finger at your partner. It's really about understanding something that we were never really taught. And it's that how you see yourself shapes what you tolerate in a relationship. How you speak to yourself shapes how you allow others to speak to you. How connected you are to your own needs and desires and truth determines how clearly you're going to be able to show up in connection with someone else. So if you're feeling disconnected from yourself, you're going to eventually feel disconnected in your relationships. And if you are constantly abandoning your own needs, you're going to start accepting relationships where your needs are also not fully seen. Not because there's something wrong with you or even something wrong with your partner, but because we often teach people how to treat us through how we treat ourselves. And this is where the real work begins. Not fixing the other person or analyzing every detail about the relationship, but really turning inward with honesty, with curiosity, and really rebuilding that connection with yourself. Learning how to hear your own voice again, learning how to trust your own needs again, learning to choose yourself in small, consistent ways so that you no longer disappear inside your own life. Because when your relationship becomes stronger with yourself, clearer and more aligned, then everything else in your life begins to shift in response. And something I hear from my clients all the time is, we need to communicate more, or we need to spend more time together, or I just need to try harder. And on the surface, that makes a lot of sense because when something feels off in a relationship, we naturally assume that the solution is to do more of what relationships are supposed to be built on, which is connection, conversation, effort, all of that. But what often happens is that nothing really changes, or if it does, maybe it shifts briefly. But before you know it, the old patterns start to slip back again. And then again, the frustration builds and confusion builds. And you ask yourself, why I'm trying everything. Why is this not working? Right. But the issue is not effort. And it's not that you're not doing enough. It's not that you don't care enough. It's that effort alone is not going to repair disconnection that's happening at the level of yourself. Because again, if you are disconnected from yourself, no amount of additional communication is going to land fully. No amount of time together is going to truly feel connected. And no amount of trying harder is going to create emotional intimacy that you can actually feel. Because what's missing isn't actually the action between two people, it's really reconnection with yourself, to your own needs, your own truth, your own emotional clarity. And until that piece is addressed, everything else is going to start to feel like effort without impact. This is why so many women feel like they're doing everything right in their relationship and still not feeling the way that they want to feel inside. Because the real shift doesn't come from trying harder, it comes from coming back to yourself. So now the real question is, what do I actually do with that? And that's exactly why I created what I call the 5 pillars of the next level woman. And now this is not theory. It's not mindset advice that feels good for a moment and then kind of disappears when life gets real. This is a structured process. It's a framework that I use with my clients to create real lasting transformation in how they relate to themselves and how that shows up in every area of their life. Because transformation does not happen by accident. It happens when you have a clear path to follow, a way to come back to yourself consistently. and a way to interrupt old patterns and replace them with something that's more aligned, more grounded, and more true to who you are becoming now. These 5 pillars are what we use to move from awareness to embodiment, from insight to change that you can actually feel in your everyday life. And as we go through them, I want you to start noticing not just what resonates, but where you can already see yourself in what I'm describing. Because this isn't about becoming someone new, it's just about returning to yourself at a deeper level than before. So the first pillar is awaken. And this is where everything really begins because you can't change what you're not aware of. And most of what shapes your life and your relationships isn't happening at the surface level. It's happening below awareness. So it's in the patterns that you repeat without even realizing it. It's the way that you respond when you feel unseen. It's the way that you overextend yourself when you feel needed, the way that you shut down when you feel disappointed, and the way that you abandon yourself in small, quiet moments that don't seem significant at the time, but accumulate over the years. So to awaken this means that you begin to see what has been running automatically, not with judgment, not with blame, but just with clarity. You start to really notice the storylines that you've been living inside of. You start to recognize emotional habits that have become so familiar, even though they're not serving you. And most importantly, you start to see how much of your experience has been shaped unconsciously rather than intentionally. Now, this is a really powerful shift because awareness changes your relationship to everything. And once you see it, you're no longer fully inside of it. And that's where change actually becomes possible. So, awaken is not about fixing yourself, it's about finally seeing yourself clearly so that you can begin to choose differently. The second pillar is reclaim. So, once you begin to see your patterns clearly, you can't unsee them. And that awareness naturally leads you to ask, now what do I do with this? So, reclaim is where you begin to take yourself back. Not in a dramatic way, not by changing everything overnight, but just in the quiet, consistent moments where you start choosing yourself again. You reconnect with your voice, the voice that maybe you've minimized or doubted or softened over time in order to keep the peace or to avoid conflict. And you start to notice what you actually feel, not just what you think you should feel. You reconnect with your needs, not as something to justify or earn, but just because your needs are valid and there's something worth honoring. And you also reconnect with your standards, not unrealistic expectations of others, but clear internal guidelines of how you want to be treated, how you want to be spoken to, and how you want to be shown up for. This is where you stop outsourcing your worth to how others respond to you. And you start to really anchor your worth within yourself. So, reclaim is not about becoming demanding, it's just about becoming aligned. It's the moment where you start remembering, I matter in this equation. The third pillar is elevate. This is where things begin to feel different in real time. Because once you've awakened to your patterns and start reclaiming your voice, your needs, and your standards, the next shift is in how you show up in your relationships. You don't force connection. You don't chase understanding. You don't over explain or over give or over function just to feel close to someone. Instead, you begin to elevate how you communicate, how you relate. You become more grounded in yourself before you even start a conversation. You learn to speak more clearly without abandoning your truth in order to keep things comfortable. You learn how to really express yourself without turning it into blame or criticism or collapse. And just as importantly, you learn how to stay present when things feel uncomfortable without shutting down and without disconnecting from yourself. This changes everything because when you change how you show up, you change what's possible in the relationship. Connection really starts to deepen, not because you're trying harder, but because you're not abandoning yourself in the process of connecting. And there's just a lot more clarity, there's more honesty, there's more stability. And ironically, less effort is required to feel closer. Elevate is where relationships stop being managed and just start to naturally become more authentic, more present, more real. Now, the fourth pillar is design. And this is where everything becomes intentional. Because up until this point, a lot of life can feel like it's been happening to you. So responding, adjusting, adapting, doing what needed to be done. But design is where that pattern shifts and you pause long enough to ask a different set of questions. What do I actually want now? Not who I was 5 years ago, not what made sense when I was just trying to kind of hold everything together, but me now, today. What kind of relationship do I want to experience? What kind of energy do I want to feel like at home? This is where clarity actually becomes power because when you are totally clear on what you want, you stop defaulting to what you've always had and you begin to make different choices. So, design is not about perfection and it's not about controlling every single outcome. It's just about becoming intentional instead of automatic. It's no longer about drifting through life and relationships, hoping that things are going to change, but actively participating in shaping what comes next. This is where your next chapter stops being something that you wait for and starts becoming something that you create. And finally, embody. This is where everything integrates because awareness alone isn't transformation. Insight alone is not change. Even clarity and intention, they aren't enough if they don't get lived out in your actual everyday life. Embody is about becoming the woman that you've been talking about becoming. Not in theory, not in moments of inspiration, but in how you actually show up consistently. You don't just understand patterns anymore, you actually respond differently when they show up. You don't just know your needs, you actually honor them in real time. And you don't just have new standards, you live them, even when it's uncomfortable. So this is where your communication, your choices, and your energy and your presence, they all start to align. And the most important part is that it stops feeling like effort because you are no longer performing a version of yourself. You're actually living as yourself, confidently, clearly, fully expressed. Embody is where the work becomes who you are. And this is the level where everything in your life begins to reorganize around that version of you. This is where it all starts to land. This is about coming home to yourself. Because what we've been talking about isn't just awareness or communication or relationship tools. And it's not about a dramatic overnight transformation. It's small, powerful shifts in how you move through your life and how you start to feel more connected, not just to others, but to yourself. And you truly start to feel more confident, more present, more expressive, more honest about what you want and how you want to live. And you start feeling energized again. And there's just a return of clarity and of self. But if nothing changes, like if you don't do anything, then the patterns just repeat. Maybe not all at once, maybe not in a dramatic, obvious way, but quietly, in the same conversations that go unresolved, in the same emotional distance that never fully gets named, or in the same moments where you feel disconnected, but you push through anyway because there's always something that needs your attention. And time passes, weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and what used to feel uncomfortable just slowly starts to feel familiar. Not because it's what you truly want, but it's just because what you've become adapted to, right? What you're used to. And that's the part that women don't notice at first because we're incredibly good at adjusting, at normalizing, at making things work on the outside while quietly compromising on the inside until one day you realize, this is just my life now. And it doesn't happen at once. It just happens through a series of small moments where you choose endurance over alignment, where you choose function over fulfillment. So again, if nothing changes, then nothing changes. And this is exactly why I created the Next Level Woman Life and Love by Design experience. And I want to take a few minutes to just tell you a little bit about this program. It's really a structured process that helps you move from awareness into real transformation in how you think, how you relate, how you communicate, and how you choose yourself in real life. And this experience was really designed to guide you through that exact shift, step by step, pillar by pillar. So you're not left trying to figure it out alone or hoping that things are eventually going to change on their own because they don't change on their own. They change when you change how you decide to show up in your life and in your relationships. And that's what this work is about. It's not about fixing your relationship or fixing yourself, but really learning how to create a new way of living and relating that actually reflects the woman that you are becoming. This is where everything that we've been talking about turns into something real, supported, and actionable. And I want to show you exactly how it works. So, this is a 6-month private coaching experience for women who are ready to truly shift this. Not just talk about it differently, not just think about it differently, but actually live differently. Because this kind of change, it doesn't happen from a single insight or a motivational moment. It really happens through guidance, through structure, through reflection, and through consistent support over time. So, inside the Next Level Woman Life and Love by Design experience, we go way deeper than awareness. We work with what's actually driving your patterns. We slow things down enough for you to see clearly. And then we build new ways of thinking, relating, communicating, and choosing so that your life starts to reflect the woman you're becoming. And this is really for the woman who's done circling the same questions, who's done having the same emotional patterns repeat in different situations. She's done feeling like she understands what's happening, but nothing's actually changing. And she's ready to be supported through it. Not alone, not guessing, not starting over every few weeks, but really held to a process that actually creates change. So, over this 6 months, you're not just learning, you're also unlearning what's been keeping you stuck. And you're rebuilding that connection to yourself. You're learning how to show up in your relationships and your life in a completely different way. More grounded, more clear, more self-led, more confident. So if something in you knows that you're at this point, the point where awareness is no longer enough, this is your invitation to go all the way in. Not to become someone new, but to finally live as the woman you've been stepping into this entire time. And now the next step is a conversation, not a decision made from pressure and not a commitment for something that you're not ready for, but just a honest, grounded conversation about where you are right now and what's possible for you from here. This is a complimentary Next Level Woman consultation. And it's just a space where we slow things down, we look at what's really happening beneath the surface, and we really look at your life honestly. And we look at your relationships clearly. And we map out what your next level could actually look like if you had the support walking through it. No judgment, no pressure, just clarity. And at the end of our conversation, if it feels aligned, I'll show you what working together inside the Next Level Woman Life and Love by Design experience would look like specifically for you. So to book your consultation, go to the link in the show notes or go to odettecoronel.com/nextlevelwoman. So let this be the moment where you start stepping into what's next for you, because the best years of your life and your love are not behind you. Your next chapter can be deeper, more intentional, more aligned, and more you than anything that has come before. So if this conversation resonated with you, first of all, make sure that you're subscribed to the podcast, like the episode, share it with someone that you think needs to hear it. And if you feel ready to shift things in your life and become the next level woman, then go ahead and book a complimentary consultation with me. And until next time, remember that your life and your love are yours to design. If today's episode described you or your relationship, then this is your moment. You don't need more information. You need a new way of living, choosing, and relating. And that's the work I do with individuals and couples. If you're ready to stop repeating the same patterns and start designing your life and relationships intentionally, visit the link in the show notes and book a complimentary relationship and life audit. Remember, your life and your love are yours to design.